This is my bed. I need a new comforter because it's really ugly. On my bed is this bag. This is the jumper camera bag from Brevite. This was sent to me by Brevite for review, but they did not sponsor this video and did not get to tell me what I say about their products in this video. They did, however, ask me to make something like a what's in my bag video. So what is in my bag? Well, two pieces of tissue paper in this top compartment. In the padded camera compartment thing on the front though, we have 3 lenses. In no specific order, we have the TTArtisan 50mm f1.4 tilt shift for E-mount, the TTArtisan's Autofocus 50mm f1.8 also for E-mount but for full frame, and the TTArtisan Autofocus 56mm f1.8 for Fuji X-mount. TTArtisans and TTArtisan both sent me these lenses for review, but they did not sponsor this video and they do not have a say in what I say about their products. I do have an affiliate link to the TTArtisan website, however, which means if you buy something off their site using my link in the description, I'll earn some commission from that sale. But that doesn't mean I will treat any of them any differently than any other brand, as my goal is to try to keep my reviews as fair and unbiased as possible. Also, this video is definitely on the longer side, so if you just want to hear about one of the products in the video, you can skip to these timestamps. With the disclosures out of the way, let's go out and mess with these lenses. This video was shot with help from some random dudes I met while walking around, Freddy with his SONY VENICE 2 and Fuji X-Pro 3, and Mike with his adorable dog to hang out and mess around with these lenses. Now what in the hell is this nub doing on this gigantic and expensive cinema camera? Well, this is the $226 tilt shift lens from TTArtisan, and it is tiny compared to what I expect a tilt shift lens to be. It's a 50mm prime advertised as covering APS-C, but by the nature of how tilt shift works, it also completely covers full frame with almost no vignetting. And yes, we put a $200 lens on a Venice, and it is really cool, exceeding any expectations I had on the images this can produce. This was my first time using a tilt shift lens, and you may have never even heard of tilt shift before except for the dumb Instagram filter, but basically the tilting and shifting of the lens elements allow you to relocate the image plane relative to the subject in order to have better control over the focal plane, depth of field, and distortion. I can't say that in one go. These types of lenses are commonly used for architectural photography to eliminate distortion on vertical structures, have something that is not parallel to the image plane completely in focus, or have something interesting miniature look with high angle shots. The lens is small, being about the same size as the 24mm for Fuji X, and has a metal construction feeling nice and sturdy in my hands. The iris is controlled by the frontmost ring, the focus in the middle, and then the tilt and shift mechanisms closest to the sensor. I do wish this was backwards though, just for ergonomic reasons, as I found myself accidentally changing iris often when I wanted to pull focus. As with all other lenses, the focus throw is very short, which is fine for quick and large focus pulls, but not great for precise control. The minimum focus distance is pretty close for a 50mm, about 50 centimeters. However, when fully tilted, the far focus is super close. I wasn't able to get this couple in focus even though they were a reasonable distance from myself. Even at one of those weird angled focus things, the far focus was pretty depressing, but I think that's just a tilt shift thing I need to have more practice with. Image quality wise, we tested this on full frame sensors, so anything outside the APS-C frame lines should be taken with or without a grain of salt, as this lens is meant for crop sensors. Wide open at f1.4, this lens is borderline unusable because of how soft it is, but immediately starts getting cleaner as soon as you close down to even around f1.8. There is also a significant amount of fringing, especially on higher resolution sensors like that of the VENICE 2, and green and magenta chromatic aberration in out of focus areas. The bokeh, without any tilting or shifting, have a pleasing soft look with a bit of swirly characteristics as you move closer to the edge. With tilting, it goes all sort of crazy wide open, so take a look at some examples. I did find 50mm full frame a bit too tight when trying to do architectural photos, so in APS-C this would be even tighter, having a 75mm equivalent field of view on Sony. You'd need to scoot really far back to get a significant amount of information in focus. You may have noticed that a few of the B-roll shots looked super choppy. That is because I didn't have an ND filter and had to expose with shutter speed for this TTArtisan's 50mm 1.8 autofocus prime lens. This is currently TTArtisan's only autofocus lens for full frame, and it is cheap but produces some pretty damn nice looking images. This lens comes in Sony E and Nikon Z mount. The bayonet is kinda cool and has a USB-C port for firmware updates. The lens has a declicked aperture ring with takes every 1/3 stop, which is always a huge plus with autofocus lenses, so I don't have to take my hands off my handle or grip to open or close the iris. There is an auto option, so you can control aperture from the camera. I did have issues time to time with the aperture glitching out between 2 different values when the ring wasn't set exactly on a tick, but that may just be the communication between the lens and the camera switching, as I didn't see any change in exposure. I also noticed that the ticks after the 16 are useless and immediately switch to in-camera adjustments as soon as you go past the 16 tick. Typically, cheap autofocus lenses use stepping motors, in which this one does. I'll be honest, I have no idea how the autofocus settings work on my camera since I've used autofocus like 3 times, but from what I've tested, it seems to work well, able to track a pretty quick moving subject, in this case this adorable 4-legged baby at 4K 120 FPS. But it did start to have some trouble closer than, I want to say, about 3 meters. Otherwise, face and eye tracking work perfectly fine as long as the subject isn't moving at the speed of sound with my testing.
If he barely hears it, he'll just go.
When I was in zone focus and I had something in the foreground and was trying to focus on the 3 phases, the lens would hunt like crazy, unable to focus on anything for almost the entirety of the clip, which then it focuses on the foreground. This didn't happen any other time during the day, so I have no idea if that was just one random incident or if there's specific scenarios this lens doesn't function at its best. There is an AF/MS switch on the side, but it has really soft clicks, so you could bump it on and off accidentally as you're pulling focus or iris and not have any feedback, as I did a couple times during the day. As with the tilt shift lens, fringing is present wide open, though nowhere near as extreme as the previous lens. This quickly goes away as you close down the aperture. The autofocus characteristics are unique compared to what I've seen in other lenses. I don't know if I should describe it as having character or messy depending on the image. Like this shot, the transition from what's in focus is a bit all over the place, like it has astigmatism, but this shot looks like magic. This lens does come with a lens hood, but from my experience so far, it doesn't do too much. Light either just comes right into the lens or bounces off inside of the hood, causing some weird streaking and glaring. I think the hood definitely could have been more substantial. And without the lens hood at all, light, especially sunlight, flares like crazy, rendering your image borderline unusable. So a lens hood is a must with this lens. By the way, this lens is 104mm long, almost exactly the same size as my Tamron 17-28, so it is a small lens, but bigger than, say, the cheap Sony Prime. But all things considered, this lens is $228, currently on sale for $205 at the time of me writing the script, on par on price with the Sony 50mm 1.8 that I just mentioned, while arguably having a better image. The last lens today is the TTArtisan Autofocus 56mm f1.8 for Fuji X mount. This is the only one I couldn't give a completely fair review, since the only X mount I have is an X Pro 1, and I only had limited time with an X Pro 3, which isn't using the best of the best Fuji autofocus either. Still, the image quality is absolutely there, but first let's get the features out of the way. The rear lens cap has a built-in USB-C port for firmware updates, which is really nice versus having to buy a whole adapter like Sigma lenses. At first, the creaking of the rear lens cap didn't give me too much confidence, but the sound just turned out to be the pins of the cap in the lens. The body feels like it's from very lightweight aluminum and plastic, keeping the weight of the already compact lens light. This lens does not have an aperture ring, which is a negative to my eyes, and you have to control the iris using some sort of dial on your camera. On my camera, the rear dial is slightly loose, so it does skip a few stops every now and then, and it does take a little bit of time to get used to. If you're already used to using mirrorless cameras, you might not have an issue. Wide open fringing is present in super high contrast areas, but it is very minimal thanks to the ED elements used. And it is sharp at the center with a tinge of softness near the edges. The bokeh circles are soft, round, and very pleasing looking, and the transition from in focus to out of focus is very smooth. There is a weird light flare or streaking going on with this lens, almost like there's a light leak and film burn. So far, I've seen these red streaks from time to time, and I think it happens when the sun or some hard light source is hitting the front element at an angle, but I kind of dig it, and it has a unique effect compared to many other lenses. Although I would recommend the use of the included lens hood to have control over the flares. One negative I did have with this type of lens hood though is that I can't put the lens cap and hood on simultaneously. That might be a tiny complaint, but I just like keeping my glass safe. When Freddy tried out the lens on his X Pro 3, he says the autofocus speeds are pretty much on par with the Fuji 35mm f2, which is impressive. In single focus mode, even on the X Pro 1, the lens seemed to focus on the correct subject decently quickly almost every single time, and in continuous as well. The motors are loud though, which is something to note if you were wanting to use this for video or in quiet areas. One weird thing that kept happening on the X Pro 1 was the lens had to be reseated almost every single time. I had to turn the camera off and back on for the aperture value to show up in the camera. Did that make sense? Probably not, but I'm gonna go with it. I did try to update the firmware per the instructions on their website, but I wasn't able to get my PC to recognize the lens to dump the firmware. Let's finally talk about the bag you've been seeing from time to time. As I mentioned, this is the Brevite jumper camera bag in their pine green color. This one is the regular size, the smaller of the two sizes they offer. Brevite claims that the material used is all recycled polyester and that it is water resistant, but I have yet to test the latter out. But I have to say the material is one of the softest and most comfortable I felt for any backpack thus far. I've only had this bag for about 2 weeks though, so I can't comment on the durability, at least for a while. This is the first camera bag I've had where the padded camera compartment was on the outside relative to yourself. I've always had anxiety of the cameras just falling out or some schmuck unzipping it and stealing my gear, so I've always had bags with the compartment on the inside. Just as a side note, that is just an anxiety I have and it's never happened to me personally. Anyway, the padding is nice and cushy, but the dividers were a bit weird to lay out since I had to put the longest divider randomly along the long edge for the shorter dividers to reach each side. Or I'm just stupid and I apparently should never play puzzle games. I do wish this compartment was larger though in all dimensions. As you can see, my X Pro 1 doesn't fit properly when it's placed horizontally relative to the ground when it's sitting up straight. Much less space would be taken up if I could, and I would always do that with my previous bags. But that issue might just not exist with the large version, but I can't confirm as I don't have that one. You also have access to the camera compartment from the side via this zipper. There is a pocket in front with a bunch more pockets inside where I could store batteries, filters, and other small items. The water bottle pocket holds a sufficiently sized bottle very easily. On the back is this thing where you can slide the handle of your luggage, and a small pocket where you can maybe hide like a passport or some small valuable item, assuming your camera isn't valuable enough. On the bottom is a strap where you can tie your tripod up. I do love camera bags that have a separate compartment for just whatever item. I hate hardcore bags where you have to open up the entire bag just to get like one piece of gum from within your camera gear, but I'm also not a professional traveling photographer. At least it's almost as big as the camera compartment, so there's more than plenty of space to pack things for a short, light trip or commute, which this bag is most likely meant for. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. Inside are some small pockets that you can put small items like a single quarter, small stuff. This bottom padding is adjustable to either give more space for your cameras or your everyday carry items as well. The regular version can just barely fit a 14-inch manual MacBook Pro. As you can see, the width is perfect with no wiggle room, which may or may not be a pro depending on who you ask. This wouldn't be an issue for me, and I would have probably taken this on my next work trips to test out more if it wasn't for the fact that I just upgraded to a 16-inch that doesn't fit whatsoever. Brevite claims that the large one can fit a 16-inch, so that one would start moving your truck at 11:48 p.m. Brevite claims that the large one can fit a 16-inch, so that one would be the only option for those who like to torture their bags while traveling with a gigantic device like myself. Now, whom is this bag for, specifically the regular one? Probably not pros. I just don't think it's sturdy enough to safely or at least confidently carry multiple $1,000s worth of gear, nor is it nowhere near big enough. I myself am primarily a hybrid video editor who happens to do some photography and occasionally some DP/AC and cam up work, but I have a Pelican to carry my camera and lenses, and if that's not necessary, a slightly bigger 20-something liter bag that can fit about twice the amount of gear as this jumper. On the other hand, when I go out with my friends or myself just to go shoot or hang out, I like the other extreme and go as small as possible while carrying sufficient essentials, so I have a 6-liter sling. I think the jumper is a great middle spot for a casual photographer, not being too small and not being too large. I had this on a bike ride for about 3 hours and it was very comfortable the whole time. I had 2 cameras, the FX3 and my X Pro 1 with the 3 lenses in this video alongside the TTArtisan 25mm pancake lens, a bottle of water, and a jacket folded up. I think $136 US is an extremely reasonable price for a camera bag of this quality, considering I paid a lot more for my current bag. This bag comes in 10 other colors, although 3 seem to be sold out at the moment, and the same colors are available for the large one. So there you go, 4 items reviewed in one video. If you want to purchase anything mentioned here, links are on the description, and like I mentioned, the TTArtisan link is an affiliate link. And with that, I'm going to go work on the other videos I've procrastinated forever a month. Stay safe, don't die, see ya.